What's going on, everyone? So, myself, many of you, I'm sure, if not everybody watching this video, are very excited and anxious for the upcoming Scary Movie 6. I am glad that it's back in the Wayans brothers' hands, and then that they can kind of steer the ship and kind of get this franchise back on track. And I hope that this is one of many movies to come where the Wayans brothers are at the helm and we can get just quality spoofs and quality comedy films again. And hopefully this maybe could spark and set the trend for other comedies to kind of make a resurgence. So I feel like when was the last like really good comedic film? But hopefully this works out because Scary Movie is one of my favorite films ever. The original, Scream. I'm sure most, if not all of you watching this are very familiar that I basically built the back of this channel on Scream. And, anytime I watch Scream, I still to this day, like certain scenes, certain moments, things like that I'll just start cracking up and just like, be watching it with somebody. They're like, why are you laughing at this scene? It's just like, you got to see Scary Movie, right? Like it's hilarious. But one of the big questions with the upcoming Scary Movie is, what films are they going to spoof? Like, we all have our ideas, we all have our thoughts on who and what they should do and the direction that they should go, and what films, sprinkle in some classics, sprinkle in some modern films, right? And I've even talked about how a lot of the films that they spoofed in the original have all, kind of came full circle and are back. And so it's like, man, you could do Scream again. You could do I Know What You Did Last Summer again. You could do a lot of the Exorcist, like a lot of these films that, that they spoofed and made fun of then. I imagine that there'll be some kind of requel, legacy sequel type comedic moments and whatnot, because I think you have to. But dive into that here more in a moment, because Marlon Wayans gave us a little clue on kind of some of the films that may end up being in this upcoming Scary Movie. So Marlon Wayans said, I'm just a fan of the whole genre, man. Speaking on horror, I Know What You Did Last Summer may have something in there. I think the Scream franchise is always a great one. I think Heretic was a wonderful film. Long Legs, Get Out, Nope. There are just so many great horror films to pull from that we plan on having a field day. Sinners, right? So, a couple things about this, right? One, we know Ghostface is back in this. So, he says, like, comprehension is important, because I'm seeing a lot of like articles and news reports and stuff that are saying like that these are the 6 films or whatever that Marlon Wayans said he's going to spoof. Not necessarily. Again, he said, I Know What You Did Last Summer may have something in there, right? So they might touch on I Know What You Did Last Summer again. It may have something in there. I think the Scream franchise is always a great one, right? We know Ghostface is back, stuff like that. I think Heretic was a wonderful film. He didn't say that he's going to use Heretic. He just said he thought that was a wonderful film. And then he says, Long Legs, Get Out, Nope. There are just so many great horror films to pull from that we plan on having a field day. He's not saying he's using like Long Legs, Get Out, Nope. He's saying that like, hey, there's all these films that we could pull from. He's not necessarily saying that like, oh, expect a Long Legs, a Get Out, a Nope reference, right? And then at the end he says Sinners, which I think that one is another one that you more likely than not will have a reference in this film and that they'll kind of, poke fun of. So just kind of keep that in mind. Now, it is possible that maybe he does use, bits and pieces from all of this, but, comprehension is key, because I'm seeing a lot of people kind of just run with this as like, okay, these are the films that he's absolutely going to spoof. Not necessarily. He's just saying that he's using references of films and saying like, look, there's such a pool to draw water from that we can go all kinds of different directions and stuff like that, which I'm excited for, right? To, have like fun little things and little instances. And like I said, I don't think that this is going to be the only film. If this film has success, which I believe it will, I think that they will have other films that follow up, and they should, right? And I just think that, you get a handful, right? In every Scary Movie, you get a handful of horror films. You get a couple, non-horror films that kind of, just pop culture films that get sprinkled in and stuff like that. Like you had like Charlie's Angels and things along those lines, right? So I do expect that we'll get nice little, obviously the horror elements, but we'll probably get a couple nice little funny references. It's like, oh, that's from this movie or whatever. That's from the new Superman movie or whatever, right? Like, so I think that there will be, nice kind of combinations, and there is a lot to kind of draw from iconic movies that have been really good over the last few years to even some of the lesser ones. I mean, like you could even do things like Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, and have somebody like in a Pooh mask or something like that, and just like spoof the kind of it doesn't have to necessarily be the big name films. Like you could do little fun references and things like that, but obviously the ones that he mentioned are kind of the more well-known, more successful ones, those are the ones that you usually want to piggyback off of, the more known ones, so that way people kind of get the jokes, get the references. You have kind of mirrored moments or sequences that you're kind of poking and making fun of, to where, it's like, okay, that's clearly this or that. You want the jokes and the scenes and whatnot to kind of land. But I don't mind, having a couple little moments here and there that you got to kind of, maybe figure out, or if you're not familiar with, you can now educate yourself in and stuff. Cause like, that's fun. It's like, man, what was that reference? Right. And then it's fun to like learn what that was and figure out what that reference was, and then kind of go back and then kind of enjoy it again and stuff. So, again, creativity, obviously, which the Wayans brothers do a really good job with. And I do think that they're going to do a great job of kind of getting this franchise back on track, getting these horror films in order and whatnot. And at the end of the day, it's just, again, I just want a good kind of spoof film. I want a good kind of comedic film, right? Like, push the boundaries a little bit here, right? Like, can we kind of get back? Like, you think of like a lot of the iconic comedic films, like The Hangover and things like that. Like, it's just, can we get films like that? There's some stuff that maybe you just can't do today. I just think, if it's all in good taste, right? Like there's things that you can kind of push the envelope on. And I hope that they kind of, get back. I mean, the Scary Movie films didn't do anything that was like crazy controversial. Like, wow, I can't believe they did that. So I'm sure that, the Wayans brothers, especially a lot of them, Marlon being a stand-up and whatnot, they have their finger on the pulse. They have an idea of what it is. But, also, like I mentioned, you have a lot of just the classics that they spoofed. And I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream and things like that. The Exorcist, as I mentioned, to where they can, you could essentially remake the original Scary Movie like they did in like Scream 5, where it was basically almost like a carbon copy of the original Scream, and you had very similar scenes and stuff like you could do things like that, and it's just like one big joke, right? It's just like, that's what they're doing right now with a lot of these horror films. So why wouldn't you just kind of inherently go that route? So I do think that there's a lot of just fun potential here, which is why I'm so excited for it. I really do hope that they do a good job with just, telling the stories, executing, having good skits and stuff like that, kind of thrown into the film. And then, of course, the horror films. Because there is, you think of how long the original, especially since the Wayans brothers have been back, right? When was Scary Movie 2? Off the top of my head, it was, 2002, 2001, something like that. So, I know the original was 2000, but the sequel came out, a year later? 2 years later, something like that? So, point is that, they have so much to draw from over the last 25 years, right? Since they've been at the helm. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm very excited for it. But as always, this is a discussion. Pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. It's me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel. What are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one.